Right out of nowhere, Mark Gurman drops a bombshell report that we could see the iPhone SE4 next week. Yes, I repeat, next week. I can't believe this myself. It does not feel like an iPhone is right around the corner, but here we go, guys. Now, surprisingly, Gurman actually gives us an idea on the date we could see the iPhone SE launch. He says we should see this phone launch at the same time as the upcoming Powerbeats Pro 2, which are expected to launch on February 11th, and so put it down in your calendar, guys. Monday is when we could be expecting this new iPhone, and obviously there's no event. This will be released via press release, which makes me wonder if we're going to see the rest of the rumored spring releases like the iPad Air and the iPad 11 via press release as well. Now that we know the release date, let's talk about pricing, because Mr. Gurman spills the beans and we have both good and bad news. So the good news is that the iPhone SE4 won't be outrageously expensive. Gurman says they're targeting a price range between $400 and $500, which is what the current SE3 sits at. But if you're wondering what the bad news is, because Gurman is being so vague about the price, I think that does suggest the price tag is going to be closer to $500, or maybe even $499. Now honestly, yes, that is a price increase, but that's not too bad considering the SE3's $439, and so for $60 more you're getting OLEDs, a new design, a better camera and better performance. Also, this will still be cheaper than the outgoing iPhone 14 that it's replacing at $599, so honestly this is not too shabby, guys. I'll take this pricing gladly. Now let's move on to the front of the SE4, because there's been conflicting rumors on whether the SE4 is going to have a notch or dynamic island, but thankfully display analyst Ross Young chimes in and tells us we should see, breaking news, a notch. And while I saw this coming, guys, this should not be a surprise. Do remember that Apple wants the iPhone SE4 to look more dated compared to newer iPhone models, and so notch does make sense when the rest of the range have an island. Now I know some of you guys had mentioned that sales are currently pretty slow in key countries like China for the iPhone, and so maybe they don't want to risk this iPhone looking too dated, which is a fair point, but then again, Apple would rather sell you higher end iPhones. The smartphone market has matured, and so while they're not shipping as many phones as before, if they can get most to buy those higher end devices that cost upwards of $1,000 with the juicier profit margins, there's no real difference revenue wise. This is big brain stuff from Timothy, and so whilst I think the iPhone SE4 is going to be great value, I do think there's going to be shortcomings that get you to buy more expensive iPhones, and the notch is one of those. It's also why I don't see this getting a dynamic notch, because if you want those fancy animations, you've got to pay up for the Pro phones. Anyway, we have a video and pictures of quite detailed models of the SE4, which for one show us a notch that's to be expected, and on the back there's only one single camera, which will be 48 megapixels, just like iPhone 16. The rails of the device should be aluminium, just like every other non-Pro iPhone, and there is no action button or camera control to be found on this, so yes, that's going to remain an exclusive for higher end iPhones. This will continue having a mute switch, which I'm not surprised by. I can live with that for the lower price, though I won't deny it would have been nice to see an action button on this. You know what else would be nice? If you click that subscribe button, of course. It's free and will bring you the latest about Apple right to your subscription box, so please consider it. It would be appreciated. Join the Saranbyte gang now. Anyway, similar to Sonny Dixon's models, these dummies do also come in black and white, and considering Apple's all of a sudden stopped producing red iPhones, I do wonder if this will be the first iPhone since the 10 to not come in any color except black and white. That would be a bummer, but then again, maybe it's an intentional decision on Apple's end to upsell you to higher end iPhones, because yes, there are regular consumers who care about colors and might buy the 15 or 16 solely for that reason. These dummies do have a feature a matte finish on the back, so unlike the iPhone SE3, which has a glossy finish, the SE4 will look a lot more like the iPhone 15 and 16 with a frosted finish, which is a nice touch. But overall, guys, when you look at the specs of the iPhone SE4, even with the notch, at $500, this does seem too good to be true. But even this phone will have an Achilles heel, and that's the fact it could be one of Apple's first devices to use their in-house modem. Now that doesn't sound like bad news, but for those unaware, Apple currently relies on Qualcomm for their modems, but a couple of years ago they had bought out Intel's modem business as a basis for their own modems, except Intel's modems were not great. Those were in the iPhone 10 and 10s, and yeah, people had many modem issues with those phones. Now though, after tweaking a few things, they're going to be launching their own in-house modems based on this technology, and the first product in this will be the iPhone SE4. According to Mark Gurman, Apple's modems should be able to achieve theoretical speeds of up to 4 gigabits per second, which is slower than the Qualcomm modems Apple currently uses, and there's also no millimeter wave support for those in the US. Gurman also worryingly says there could be issues with call reception, and so whilst Apple has let employees secretly test these modems already, they likely won't be coming to higher end iPhones anytime soon because it is first generation technology. And so yeah, there are going to be a few issues. Now, lower end products are the perfect guinea pig for new technology because if there are issues, it's not that big of an issue when the phone costs $500. And honestly, it's not all doom and gloom because there will be some advantages with Apple's in-house modem, such as lower power consumption, so we could get better battery life, improved cellular network scanning, and satellite connectivity enhancements, and these will be produced by TSMC. Apple plans for these modems to replace Qualcomm's technology in iPhones by 2027, and so we are still a while away before higher-end iPhones get this, but at the very least, guys, I'm really hoping there aren't too many issues with these first-gen modems, and it isn't a massive hindrance with the iPhone SE4. But yes, the fact is, speeds will be slower on this iPhone, but that works in Apple's favor because it's going to push consumers to buy higher end models. So let's now recap everything we know about the iPhone SE4, and guess what? Gurman does exactly that in a new report. So let's just regurgitate everything he said. So for one, he told us this will be similar to the iPhone 14, which is not a surprise. We see that in the models, we see that in pretty much every other leak for this phone. But hey, Gurman chiming in and corroborating on this is great news. This alone means we're getting Face ID instead of Touch ID, and more importantly a 6.1-inch OLED, which is going to be a humongous upgrade over the 4.7-inch LCD display we have right now. But Gurman clarifies on some confusion regarding whether the SE4 is getting Apple Intelligence support or not. Previously, Ice Universe had mentioned we could see, and I quote, 6 to 8 gigs of LPDDR5 memory, which does suggest you might get different amounts of RAM depending on the storage tier you get. This is quite common in the Android space, but would be a first for the iPhone, though do remember the iPad Pro has done this for a while now, with base models getting 8 gigs and higher storage variants getting 16 gigs of RAM. Anyway, if certain variants of the SE4 get 6 gigs of RAM, they would not be able to run Apple Intelligence. You need a minimum of 8 gigs, and so as I mentioned in previous videos, I don't see Apple doing this. It would be very confusing if only higher end storage tiers offered a feature that was so crucial to the iOS experience. And thankfully, Gurman makes it clear that no, the SE4 is going to have full Apple Intelligence support, so expect 8 gigs to come as standard. And yeah, this makes sense because Apple Intelligence is Apple's next big thing, and so they want every device to run this. Also, to be fair, considering the A18 is currently only in the iPhone 16, and we know for sure that has 8 gigs of RAM, they're likely just going to be recycling the same SoCs in those phones in the iPhone SE4 as well. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching. So this year could be a big year for the HomePod, because we have rumors about 2 new HomePod products launching this year, HomePod Display, as well as a new HomePod Mini. So